It's the weekend and we all enjoy getting out on the water, but we all know that one guy who enjoys it just a little bit more than the rest of us. Welcome back, guys, to this week's episode of Boneheaded Boaters of the Week. For those of you who tuned in last week, you saw we talked about a great subject, which is the ways you can get stopped on the water. Another way you can get stopped out there on the water, though, is going to be running into things. We actually talked about this subject several weeks back as well, and one of the key points we mentioned was if you boat long enough, it's going to happen. You are absolutely going to run into something out there on the water. It doesn't matter how good of a boater you think you are, it's just going to happen at some point in time in your boating life. So today we're going to talk a little bit about that, some ways you can avoid running into things out on the water. One of the key things you can do if you see boats anchored, well, try and avoid them, kind of like our guy did not do here. The next step is be careful around the docks. This is the most common place that people are going to hit things, where you could run into the dock or maybe even one of your crewmates. Fortunately, in this situation here, nobody gets injured and the boat winds up being okay. But once again, around the docks, you've got to stay in control. Slow is the way to go around the docks. The last thing you want to do is try and overcompensate with power. You're almost never going to win in this situation. The next one's going to be bridges. My lovely bridges. I mean, if they would only figure out a way, as we've mentioned before, to put signs on letting you know how tall they are, and most boat manufacturers will absolutely let you know the bridge height of your vessel right in the owner's manual. These guys even have a foldable tower, so there's no excuses here. The next one we'll talk about is hitting land in a boat. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hitting land, BG, how is that possible? I mean, these guys had to see it coming. Well, most of the time when people hit land, I want to say it's intentional. Maybe they were trying to beach the boat and they came in just a little too hot. Or maybe they lost power. But typically when somebody hits land, there's an excuse. But some people have to overcompensate and go big or go home. Like this crew here. Not only will they hit land, they decide they're going to hit a truck while they're at it as well. Now, the next item that you can hit when you're out there on the water we're going to discuss, well, that's going to be another boat. Again, this kind of falls into that land category. If you wind up hitting another boat, you're typically going to see this one coming. Now, this can happen because of many different factors. Some of the most common ones, though, are going to be one of the captains not following the rules of the road. 2, one of the vessels possibly losing power or having mechanical issues, causing the vessel to be in a spot it shouldn't be in. And then number 3 is when weather takes over and winds up pushing your vessel into another vessel. This one's not quite as uncommon as you think. In fact, weather can be a major factor in some of the things that can go wrong in boating and cause you into hitting things. As a matter of fact, that's going to be the next item we'll talk about that you can hit out on the water, and that is going to be weather itself. That's right, sometimes when you hit weather out on the water, it can be its own catastrophe upon itself. Kind of like right here, these images are from the Suez Canal and what is known as a sandstorm, which is not an uncommon event up there. But the craziest part about this, you cannot anchor in the Suez Canal. So what that means is when these sandstorms roll through like this, these vessels have no choice but to continue on and pray that they do not hit anybody. Now, fortunately for most of these vessels in the Suez Canal when this happens, they typically are going to have a pilot on board, and this is one of the reasons that a pilot's one of the highest paid positions on the water, because they're going to have to be able to navigate in these situations and do so safely. The next thing we'll talk about hitting, well, we'll go back to the old sandbar. We talked about this one in one of our last videos, that it's one of the most common things people will hit out on the water. Now, obviously, I'm going to say the dock is number 1, but if it is, the sandbar is number 2. And it's always crazy to watch how people try and come up with ways to get off the sandbar after they've somehow found their way onto it. But all this really does come down to the same thing, guys. If you're getting out there on the water, make sure to boat safely. Obviously, never approach anything, including land, any faster than you're willing to hit it. Always use updated charts, and if you're on unfamiliar waterways, use extreme caution because you never know what's underneath you. And the last thing you want to do is get out there on the water thinking you're going to enjoy yourself and have a great day, only to hit something you can't see, and the next thing you know, your boat winds up on the bottom. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Boneheaded Boaters of the Week. If you ever see anything crazy happening out on your waterways, be sure to hit us up on Facebook or Instagram and let us know, and you might see your stories over here. Just like Nushagak Fisheries, James Power Jr., KD Fannin, Kite Observer, Matt Lunds, Metal Matrix, Midnight 67, Salt Man, the Zach Black, and Zach White 3825 did this week. And if you guys haven't already, go ahead and drop an anchor on the subscribe button here.